This story is about Jira, a researcher with a project to conduct research work in Sa Kaeo province in Thailand. She planned to go with 3 other friends, including Tip, Nutch, and Viren. When the appointed day arrived, she traveled to Sa Kaeo province, with the first destination being a hotel to settle down and plan for the research. She decided to start with the area near the district before heading to the border area on the last day. On the first day of research, they surveyed a temple in the district, coinciding with a religious event. Jira decided to participate in the event and then collect data for about 2 to 3 hours afterward. One of Jira's friends noticed a nearby village and arranged for the driver to pick them up there around 4 p.m. They crossed the road to reach the village, which was a large community known for producing various goods and handicrafts. Jira thought they could gather valuable research data there. In the village, they witnessed the villagers sharing a large pot of pork soup, which they gladly offered to Jira's team as well. While eating, they engaged in conversations with the villagers. Suddenly, a disheveled man approached. The village elder explained that he was called Mon, once a normal person and a poet, but he became mentally unstable after a failed romance with a woman named Nori. So, about 20 years ago, there was this land agent who was a wealthy man. He came to do business around this area and coincidentally fell in love with Nori. Eventually, they got together and he took Nori to live with him. Now, Nori is living comfortably as the gentleman's wife, having built a large house for his mother. She sits there weaving blankets. As for Mon, he's hurt, deeply saddened until he's confused, lost in madness. Jira then asked, "Wow, Nori must have been really beautiful. I mean, to the extent that it drove someone to madness." The village elder replied, "Oh yes, her appearance was strikingly different from the locals. She was tall, had long arms, red hair, blown eyes, pale skin, and a pointed nose." When Jira heard this, she said, "Ah, I see. Nali must be of mixed race, part Caucasian." While Jira was conversing with the village elder, a teenager carried a bowl of pork leg soup to give to the crazy man named Mon. When Mon saw this, he was startled and began to shout incoherently, then ran into a room that looked like a container from the outside. The exterior was covered with large iron sheets, while inside, there were construction tools stacked high, including metal tools and carpentry equipment. In the middle of the room, there was a small raised platform made of bricks, and there were knives and swords arranged in an X shape on top of it. As time passed and dusk approached, Jira's group gathered at the designated spot to wait for their ride. However, as they waited, the vehicle failed to arrive, prompting them to call their driver. It turned out that the uncle's car, which was supposed to pick them up, had broken down and needed significant time for repairs. The village elder suggested they stay there for the time being, as there was no other option. Reluctantly, Jira's group agreed to spend the night there. Late into the night, as Jira's group was sleeping, they suddenly heard banging noises, as if someone was hitting something against the wall. Startled, they ventured out of the house to investigate. Jira led her friends towards the source of the noise until they reached the container. They were all shocked to see something attempting to protrude from the outside wall of the container. Its appearance resembled a gigantic human face, gaping mouth wide open and swaying back and forth as if it was tormenting them. Suddenly, Mon, the crazy man, burst out of the container, laughing maniacally, before disappearing into the darkness. At that moment, Jira's group screamed loudly, causing the village elder and the villagers to come out and see what was happening. They witnessed Jira's group standing there in shock, some of them collapsing to the ground. The village elders immediately came forward to provide first aid and comfort. Jira then recounted what they had seen. After hearing the whole story, the village elders looked visibly shaken and exchanged meaningful glances with each other. One of the uncles spoke up, saying, "Oh my, that crazy Mon. He's feeding the spirits. He's using black magic, dark spells or something. Hope it will bring his wife back. He's so obsessed with this matter that he's gone insane. After listening to the entire story, Jira's group went back to sleep. The next morning, Nutch, one of Jira's friends, fell ill and had a high fever. They decided to send Nutch back to the hotel first. Jira and her remaining friends had to collect data as this research was crucial. It was a make-or-break situation, whether they would grow from this project or not. That day, Jira's group collected data around the village and waited for the evening for the car to pick them up. However, things felt strange that day. When they looked into the rusty room, that container, it looked ominous, as if something sinister was about to come out. But they had to muster the courage and ignore it as they needed to finish their work and complete the project. In the evening, they waited for the car, but it didn't arrive. Fate seemed to play its hand again. The hotel called and informed them that the car couldn't leave due to heavy traffic. Jira was frustrated but declared that they didn't need the hotel's car. They would accept any car that could come immediately. After that, they packed up their belongings and waited until it got dark. While they were discussing and analyzing the research they had collected, they heard the banging sound again. Soon, villagers rushed out, and Jira's group, curious and emboldened by the crowd, went to see what was happening. In the rusty room, they saw the crazy man, Mon, using a hatchet to break the wall vigorously. It was an intense and mad effort. The villagers, upon hearing the sound, rushed to the scene. But this time, they hesitated to intervene because the madman was armed. Finally, at one point, the madman used the hatchet to hit a specific spot on a small raised platform made of bricks, until it cracked. Jira's group, inching closer without realizing it, stood near the spot where the incident occurred. Jira noticed a piece of paper floating out of the crack. The paper landed at Jira's feet, along with a strand of red hair floating along with it. At that moment, the crazy man quickly grabbed the strand of red hair and hugged it, crying uncontrollably, almost suffocating. It was a pitiful sight. Simultaneously, Jira picked up the paper to see what was written inside. It was a poem. The poem read, "While I can never repay you for the wonder you bring to my life, I can forever be true and forever be Amon's wife." At that moment, Jira felt like crying. It was a sadness at the scene that had unfolded. So she handed a small piece of paper to the madman. When the madman took it, his eyes softened with sadness. His demeanor subdued, showing no signs of madness anymore. Slowly, he got up, walked, and then ran out into the forest. Seeing this, the adults looked at Jira with bewildered expressions, especially Nori's mother. Her eyes widened in surprise. When things calmed down, they returned to wait at the village elder's house until the car came. Waiting until late into the night, exhaustion took over and they dozed off. Suddenly, Jira woke up around 1 a.m., feeling a cold hand grab her foot. Startled, she looked and saw a young woman kneeling in front of her, her face obscured by a cloth covering her head. The woman whispered softly to Jira that the car had arrived and urged her to hurry. Without hesitation, Jira believed her and knew she had to follow. She nudged her friends awake, and everyone quietly followed the woman down the path, feeling a sense of calm resolve. During the walk, Jira noticed that the woman was tall and had a physique unlike those in the village. Moreover, she was wearing drab clothes, resembling a homeless person. The woman led Jira into the temple to meet the pickup truck waiting there. It was the truck sent by the hotel. The driver, who seemed concerned, was the same old man who had brought Jira's group there initially. The young woman turned to Jira and said, "You can get on the truck now. Let's hurry. There's not much time left." Jira's group quickly boarded the truck, and they hurriedly drove away. As they were moving, Jira glanced at the woman. Her body seemed cold. The young woman slowly removed her head covering, revealing a beautiful yet sorrowful face with long red hair. At that moment, Jira immediately knew who had brought her to the truck. She felt not fear, but only gratitude towards the woman. While driving away, the uncle turned and asked, "Has the lime pillar cracked?" Jira replied, "How did you know, uncle?" The uncle said, "I know more than you think. The news about Nori going to live with wealthy man is all a lie. Nori didn't go anywhere. She's actually inside the rusty room. In that time, I was about 12 or 13 years old. Nori loves Mon, and Mon loves her truly. Mon came courting her. He even taught Noreen how to compose poems, as Nori never went to school and had no education. But Mon taught her until Nori could compose poems herself. Then that guy came, the one who wanted to buy land. He was enchanted by Nori's beauty. Then that guy forced Noreen to go with him, but Noreen refused. So he picked up a gun and shot Noreen dead right there. But because that guy had money, he silenced the villagers with it. So the villagers had to think about destroying the body. They took Nori's body, boiled it until it decomposed, then melted it with iron. They got a large piece of metal sheets. The remaining bones and hair were buried in the middle of that room, then covered with plaster, and used those metal sheets to build a wall around that room. Inside the room, they put the weapons of the past to protect themselves from evil spirits. One of Jira's group asked, "What about Nori's mother? Did she harbor any grudges or anger?" The uncle replied, "Oh, Nori's mother was a pure evil. She used to scold and despise Nori when she was alive. But when Nori died, the mother herself cremated the body of Nori and then received a large sum of money from that man to build a new house." The uncle continued, "After this incident, I couldn't stay here anymore. I fled the town and never came back. On the way, as the story was being told, the car had to make a U-turn and pass by the front of that village once again." Jira turned to look at the village with a heavy heart, but then her heart sank even further when she saw the firelight. It was the firelight from torches held by the villagers, who were walking around anxiously. The men in the village were armed with knives and sticks, as if they were searching for someone desperately. At that moment, Jira felt no fear of ghosts, but rather a fear of the villagers themselves. Soon, the car arrived at the hotel, and Jira coincidentally met her father. Her father explained that he hurriedly drove from Bangkok because he had a dream. He dreamt of encountering a foreign woman who told him to rush back and pick up his daughter. Otherwise, something bad would happen. So her father hurried back. The next morning, the group hastily headed back to Bangkok and never looked back at that place again.